If you're having trouble winning a grand race and you're looking for a quick fix, this might not be the video for you. However, in this video, I've simplified some of the grand race strategies, and I'm hoping to enlighten some of you on the concepts that have helped me win more than 30% of my grand races. Also, I'm not going to point to your skills as a thing that you must do. Obviously, skill is linked to winning. You know that already, and when that increases, you will see better performances. The following tips and strategies are things that you can do to increase your skills. All right, let's go. Real quick before I get into the video, if you're looking for a community of racers to play with, join our Discord. There's a link in the description down below. That's also where I do all of my giveaways, and we have every topic in there from the crew Motorfest, the crew 2, to Need for Speed Heat, Need for Speed Unbound, everything Need for Speed, and all kinds of other racing games. There's over 14,000 members there, so hit that link and join us. All right, let's get into this. All right, I'm going to be breaking this down to 6 parts, and you can go to the description and click the timestamp of the part that you feel like is the most relevant to what you're struggling with. It's going to be kind of a long video because I'm very wordy, and there's a lot to talk about with grand races because there's a lot of strategy involved. So let's start with the vehicles. Unless you're one of the best racers out there, or you happen to get into a really unskilled lobby, being in a bad car is not going to go well for you. And if you're one of the best out there, I'm not really sure why you're watching this video, but thank you so much. I appreciate the extra view. You need to be using the fastest cars in order to compete. I just put out a grand race meta cars video, so definitely reference that for the fastest cars in each class right now. I will update that video, so make sure you're checking the most recent one. That concept is very simple. If you want to drive faster, you got to get a faster car. All right, we're off to a good start. Next, let's talk about rammers. The beginning of the races are by far the most chaotic, and ramming is almost unavoidable, especially in the first couple of turns. Everyone is jockeying for position with no regard for anyone else's position. There's no lines, every man is for themselves. Okay, knowing that, what can you do? The first thing is, never position yourself on the outside of the turn. Take a peek at the minimap to make sure of which turn is coming up next, and make sure you're going into that turn on the inside line. So inside that it doesn't even make sense for the racing line. The reason you want to be there is to make sure that you aren't pinned against the wall. The wall has a speed penalty, and bumping other players does not. If you can use someone else to turn in on the first couple of corners, do it. Also, try to conserve your NOS at the beginning. If you're behind someone, that means you're getting a slipstream. I'll go into more detail on slipstreams later in the video, but as long as you've got that slipstream in the beginning, then you should be saving your NOS for tricky overtake situations where rammers are trying to prevent you from passing. You can use NOS to pass quickly so they can't ram you. Next, let's talk about learning the cuts. Okay, so I can't really show you all of the cuts in this video, but I am releasing grand race tip videos that are specific to each of the different classes with live commentary, and in those you can see at the very least all of the cuts that I show. Some are tremendous, and some are just good if you can take them fast. That being said, cuts are a big part of the crew's DNA, being that it's an arcade racer, and you need to try to learn them in order to keep up with the people who know them and to ditch the people who don't. It's kind of like being in the fastest cars. It's just a foundational thing that you have to be doing and knowing that puts you on the right track for success. All right. The next thing you need to do is use your NOS correctly. So this is definitely one of the biggest mistakes I see players make. NOS usage is obviously situational, so the rules I'm about to tell you in this video are general best practices, but in the heat of the moment, sometimes you need to go with your gut. All right, rule number 1. You shouldn't be constantly on empty. There are times where you should empty your tank, such as right before a vehicle change, at the end of the race, or if there are 2 people in front of you who are slipstreaming each other and you're just a little too far away to catch their draft. Aside from those situations though, you should be using the top half of your NOS. And that's rule number 2. NOS in the top half of your meter is blue and the bottom half is red. It's because the top half is more powerful than the bottom half. Try not to go below the halfway mark if you don't have to. Using slipstream from another player is almost as good as using the NOS in the bottom half of your tank. It also allows you to save your NOS for when you absolutely need it. Rule number 3. You should be saving your NOS for times where you actually need it. Don't waste your NOS in silly situations. If you come out of a turn and someone is starting to get away from you, you don't have to empty your tank in order to try to catch up with them. try to use Slipstream to your advantage. Another way to waste your NOS is by leaving your tank completely full. You should be constantly using a little bit here and there in short bursts because your NOS is actually consistently refilling itself. And if it's just sitting there at the very top and not doing anything and you're not using it, you're completely wasting it. Rule number 4, in general, using NOS right after you shift to the next gear is the most effective time in the RPMs. In higher RPMs, most vehicles have the power or the torque to get to the next gear, and you risk wasting your NOS and redlining, which slows you down. Rule number 5, it is advantageous to short shift if the intention is to NOS right away. What do I mean? If you're in automatic, this really doesn't apply to you because you can't short shift an automatic car. But if you're driving in manual, usually you want to shift just before the needle gets to the red, right? Well, if the intention is to gain speed quickly using NOS, you're better off shifting early before the usual point and then NOSing right away. Usually a short shift leads to a bogged down acceleration. However, the NOS is so powerful in this game that it overcompensates for that bog and gives the car ridiculous acceleration. Alright, let's talk about Slipstream. I've mentioned it a few times here, but let's talk about the specifics. Slipstream is when you get a continuous speed boost by trailing another car close enough, and it's incredibly powerful for both the person trailing and the person who's leading. The person who's trailing will gain that advantage first from farther away, and then once they get close, the person in front will also gain that same advantage until both players are at the maximum allowed speed for that class. Knowing this, you can do all kinds of things like preserve your NOS, pass slower players, or even just walk away from the pack when two people are slipstreaming each other. There are lots of scenarios where recognizing that that person behind you has a slip will be great for you. If you're trying to catch a group that's in front of you and you have someone behind you, you can either try to stay in front of him and hope he doesn't wreck you, or you can let him pass and ride his bumper, giving him an extra boost, which in turn gives you an extra boost, which then gives him an extra boost. All of a sudden, you guys both will find yourselves right at the back of the pack that you were trying to catch all along without using any NOS. Then when you get there, you can utilize all the NOS you saved to make passes on that group. Additionally, you can use NOS to break your slipstream, meaning you can put enough distance between you and the car behind you to where he no longer is getting the slipstream benefit. At that point, you can just drive safely on your own without the fear of getting run into. The only issue is, in grand races, you really don't want to be caught alone. As crazy as it sounds, driving with the other players instead of against them is the best thing to do because you both will go faster, especially on the straights. Start working with others, trust me, it's gonna help you. And speaking of working with others, let's talk about the last topic, which is dealing with rammers again. So the first time I talked about dealing with rammers, it was really related to the beginning of the race. There's tons of chaos happening in the beginning of the race and lots of rammers, and it's just crazy. But what I'm talking about here is once the race has broken out a little, you start to see isolated incidents of ramming, meaning you and one other car, and that other car will not let you pass no matter what. They're willing to kill you both in the grass or in the trees in order to try to keep that lead. This is super dangerous, and more often than not, it leads to both of you guys crashing, especially if you fight back. The best thing to do is to remain patient. The grand race is long, and the chances are, if the person is acting like that, they aren't going to be the best driver. They will for sure make a mistake down the road. So just keep the pressure on them by staying behind them. Slipstream them until they make a mistake, and then you make your move. If you can preserve your NOS during that time, it will make your escape from them even easier. Chances are, they've been emptying their tank trying to stay in front of you, so when you make your pass, use your NOS aggressively to break any potential slipstream they might have, and wave to them as you say bye-bye. If you find yourself in a fight for first place, and the other person is acting crazy like that, the best thing to do is to wait to make your move until they make an obvious mistake, or you can wait until the final corner, blow your entire NOS bottle on the straight leading to the finish line, and most of the time you can get around them. But patience is super important in the grand races. And that's the last thing I want to mention. You need to be patient. You need to be patient at the beginning, you need to be patient in the middle, and you need to be patient at the end. Most of the time, just simply driving cleanly will get you a very nice finish in the grand races. You making mistakes is not going to help your progress, and I guarantee you 90% plus of the field is going to make mistakes during the race. So all you have to do is try to keep your car on the road. Doing that, I think you for sure would be top 10, if not top 5. But by applying some of the techniques that I've talked about in this video, I think you can actually win the race. Alright, so since this video is designed to help the community, if you're listening to the video at this point, I really want you to leave a comment down below as to what you're struggling with the most in the grand races. I want to know exactly what you guys are having problems with, so that I can sort of try to formulate a plan to give you guys the most beneficial tips I possibly can. So please, in the comment section, leave me your comment of what you are struggling with the most. Not necessarily just like winning the race, but what specifically bugs you the most in the grand races. All right, I hope this has helped. I know it was a long one. Thank you guys so much for watching. Again, if you have any questions, send me a DM on Instagram, Twitter, or Discord. I really appreciate it. I'll catch you on the next one. Trigger out.